like to call to order this special board meeting of the Boulder Valley School District. Laura's going to do a visual roll call, and I think we're ready to go. I'd like to welcome Allison, sorry, I don't remember your last name. It's like, to here we also have Justin and Bill, and I think we're going to go over our audit, if I'm not mistaken. So I will turn it over to the three of you, and we'll get going. Sorry we're starting a little late, but we had a few things of technical difficulty. And Kitty is videoing in, and I can see her up there, so I think we're good to go.
Great, thank you. Usually we would be doing this board meeting in December with the full audit report being done then. We're a little delayed this year because of the single audit, which is for federal programs, and the guidance on that came out a little late from the federal guidance. So we're doing both of them together a little bit later. We went over the non-federal programs audit back in November with the audit committee, and then we went over the single audit of the federal programs with the audit committee a couple of weeks ago. So this is bringing both of those together and giving the opportunity to the board to ask any questions. So I'll turn it over to Allison for a little discussion, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you. Is that working okay? Okay, good. Yeah, good evening, everyone, and thank you, board members, for having me tonight and being able to present the audit. Again, my name is Allison Slife, and I'm representing CLA, which is the external audit firm that did perform the annual financial audit that gets performed every year, and then also the single audit, as Bill mentioned, because the district is a recipient of federal funding. They have to go through what's called a single audit, which is really a deep dive into certain federal programs. Of course, as you all are aware of the influx of COVID-19 related federal programs, it kind of adds to additional complexities over the past now 2 years of testing those programs. And so, as Bill mentioned, the feds took their time in terms of issuing guidance over those programs as far as what auditors should test for. So that came out kind of in the December timeframe, and so we were able to work with the district to complete that work, get that portion of the work done really in that December, January timeframe. And so as Bill mentioned, kind of two different deliverables this year. One was the main audit, which should be in your packet, labeled, yeah, I have a hard copy here in front of me. It says the comprehensive annual financial report. So that's the very large, almost 100-page or so document that you all have a copy of. And so that's really the financial statements of the district. And this is as of June 30th, 2021. Obviously, these amounts are dated because that does relate to the past fiscal year, so we won't necessarily dive into the numbers, but really just more the results. Justin and Bill do put together a nice little 2-page kind of guide to that document if you wanted to kind of dive into that more as far as what pieces are in there. But we are planning to kind of just focus more on the results, but certainly if the board members have any questions, feel free to jump in. But specifically in the comprehensive annual financial report, or the financial statements for the district, I wanted to point out the independent auditor's report. And so hard copy page 13, I'm not sure if you have it if electronically, but probably about 13 pages into the report. But this is ultimately our audit opinion over the financial statements. So it's on CLA letterhead. You'll see kind of at the top, and it says independent auditor's report. So this is our report over the financial statements. As I said, it does outline management's responsibilities. So management ultimately does take responsibility for the results of the financial statements. Us as the external auditors, our responsibility to issue our opinion. And really the most important part of this opinion is at the top of the next page, page 14, where it talks about opinions at the very top. And it does talk about our opinion being presented fairly in all material respects over the financial statements of the school district.
Enter
and so
your meeting
that
ID,
is an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the best opinion that the district or any government can receive. And so that is the best result ultimately as a result of the audit procedures we perform. So congratulations again to the district of achieving that yet again this year for I don't know how many years running. A very, very impressive longstanding outcome, if you will, from a financial statement perspective. narrative.
Enter
So,
your participant
otherwise, different
ID
aspects of
followed
this
by
auditor's
pound.
opinion just talks about
Otherwise,
some of the
just
different
press
pieces
pound to continue.
that we do some limited procedures over, reviewing some of the smaller funds and things like that. Not every single thing within the financial statement package
You
is
have
audited.
entered the
Some of
meeting
it's
as
not.
a panelist.
It's unaudited.
Attendees can
So
now
really,
hear
that's
you
really what this
speak.
opinion
This
just kind of
meeting is
outlines
being recorded.
all of the things that we're required to outline within that report. Otherwise, though, any questions, I guess, just on the financial statements at all? I know it's a very lengthy document. I will just mention the management discussion and analysis, or MD&A, is a good kind of 10-page or so summary of what happened year over year. Of course, as I said, we're many years past year end, so maybe not as relevant, but that is a really good kind of high-level narrative of what changed year over year for the district. Any questions on that before I switch gears to the other report? Okay. The other one is the single audit report, and so that does say single audit report on the cover as well, or if you have it hard copy. So typically, I'll say pre-COVID, we would issue the single audit report at the same time as the financial statement, so they'd usually be in the back section of the compliance section. But as we talked about, given the delay in some of the federal requirements, we did have to issue those separately, which is totally fine under state rules, federal rules, all of that, but did want to just mention that kind of separate deliverable. So I kind of alluded to this, but if you want to kind of go a couple pages in to page 6 of your hard copy single audit report, it says schedule of findings and question costs. This is really the best summary, I would say, for the single audit. And so what we do is we get what's called a schedule of expenditures of federal awards, or CFA, which is a listing of all the federal awards that the district received during the same fiscal year, June 30th, 2021. We do any of the kind of bigger programs that are above this type A threshold that's listed here. For this year was 1.2 million. Those programs have to be audited every third year. And so any of your big programs typically get audited on every third year rotation basis. This year, of course, we had kind of new funding with a lot of the Esther activities that happened this past year, as well as coronavirus relief funds. So any of those kind of COVID programs, if they are big enough, they automatically have to be tested. So that's really what happened this year was, a huge influx of federal funding. And so there's kind of different qualitative and quantitative decision making that we go through to determine what programs we're testing. And so this year, we did test the Child and Adult Care Food Program, as well as the Coronavirus Relief Fund, or under the CARES Act, as more folks probably understand that, under the CARES Act, and then also the Education Stabilization Fund, or ESSER funding. We did audit those 3 programs. And so basically, we have to go through a very deep dive into those programs. We have to do a lot of testing over internal controls over those programs, as well as compliance with different federal requirements. So it's a very, very deep dive into testing for a lot of different requirements that the feds put out there, as well as the state is very involved with these federal programs as well. So this kind of shows you a summary if we would have had any sort of findings, which the kind of hierarchy, if you will, of findings. A material weakness would be the worst type of finding. Significant deficiency would be still big enough. We'd have to report it, but not as big as a material weakness. You can see on this page we had none of those, and so that's all very positive results. And we did not have any findings over the financial statements, as I mentioned, and did not have any findings over the federal awards, those 3 programs that I talked about. So if we would have had findings, we'd have to report that in this report, but basically the pages that follow show that we did not have any findings, which is all a really positive result, because we do a lot of testing, and it's not just over financial numbers, but it's over programmatic information, a lot of kind of non-financial things that a lot of folks have to be responsible for as it relates to these federal programs. So really kudos to certainly the district overall, but all those grant managers and program individuals that are responsible for compliance of those programs. Just real quick, if you were curious, on pages 9 and 10 of this report is that schedule of expenditures of federal awards, or CFA. This is that listing of all of the federal programs that had expenditures during that fiscal year. So, this past year and really the year before, as we know, a big influx of those dollars, atypical, if you will, pre-COVID, and we'll continue to see, some of these COVID-19 related programs for several years to come, especially with Esther Funds and likely some of the food service related, nutrition related programs as well. So yeah, total federal expenditures are about $42.3 million this past year. Within this report, though, we do have two kind of audit opinions, and so they're both clean, unmodified opinions, very similar to our financial statement opinion. One really is the opinion over the financial statements as it relates to internal controls, no findings, as I said, and the other one is specifically related to the federal programs, and if we would have had any findings there, we'd have to report those. But again, no findings, which is all very good results. Any questions on anything related to the federal programs or our single audit report that I can answer?
Board members, any questions? Kitty, do you have any questions? I was just wondering if you could, just at a very high level, talk about the kinds of compliance requirements that there were for spending the ESSER dollars, because I know some people are paying attention to how those dollars came in and how they were being spent. And
Sure.
so I think just your eyes on that and your assurance that we're doing everything the way we're supposed to. We never doubted it, but I just think it's really helpful to have a little bit of a conversation around that.
Sure, no, absolutely. And I was just flipping to the page that one other kind of nuance, if you will, or additional complication with ESSER funds is on page 9. There was actually 3 different types of ESSER funds, if you will. Yeah, you're shaking your head, so clearly you all are very knowledgeable of that. But related to that was also different ways we had to make sure we incorporated testing of those requirements. So I just wanted to point that out only because that's a pretty unique circumstance to have 3 different sources of funding that are subject to the audit. So specifically with ESSER funds, there was quite a few different compliance areas that we did test for. Basically, from a federal perspective, there's 12 potential compliance areas that can apply to a program. Usually the feds have to cut that down to 6 as saying, hey, these 6 are most applicable that auditors need to assess for. And then basically we take that guidance and compare it to actual spending that the district has and say, okay, yes, they had, salaries and benefits, they had non-payroll related, so general disbursements, there was cash management testing, reporting testing, there's kind of all these different, eligibility, special tests and provisions. There's a lot of potentials you can test for. So primarily the main ones I know with ESSER was a lot of the allowable cost testing, so testing to make sure that it was allowable according to the federal requirements, the grant agreements, things like that the feds put out there. And so there was a deep dive into that testing. I believe off the top of my head, there was also cash management testing, reporting. I think those are the primary areas that we tested for. And we do representative samples, so depending on how big the populations are, we test a certain amount. Usually if they're big populations, you have to test anywhere between 25, 40, and 60 transactions. So for the most part, we tested the maximum amount of transactions based on AICPA rules, which is basically AICPA tells auditors how many they need to test to have a representative sample. So we tested kind of the maximum because these were higher risk programs, new programs. And so, we have to make sure not just that the spending was allowable, right, according to the grant information, but also that there was a documented internal control in place over each of those. And that's where it can get a little hard because basically if you can't, if there's not some sort of audit trail, it's hard to prove it happened, even though, maybe there's all these, controls and procedures in place, but we have to be able to audit it. So we didn't have any issues of being able to see those kind of documented controls, but that's just another hurdle, if you will, that you have to go through with federal funds because we have to issue our opinion over that. So does that help answer your question, or did I cover that enough?
I think so, thanks.
Okay, yeah.
Is there anything that either Justin or Bill would want to add to the ESSER dollars? I think we've talked about it during various meetings, so.
So our plan includes spending them over the the remainder of this year and then 2 more years at least for the ESSER 3 bucket. We do have, I believe, some ESSER 2 remaining that'll get spent out this year. And then there's certainly additional state grants that the state, the holdback, the 10% holdback that the state had, that as those come available to apply for, we'll certainly be doing that as well. So this is not done by any means. We will continue this conversation related to these COVID funds into the next couple of years at least. Although the amounts will be much less than what they were this last year.
I'm trying to remember, didn't the state have its own auditing that they looked at this, or was it certain districts that were audited? And can you just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, Justin, you want to?
Sure. They have come in and audited the coronavirus relief funds. That was the main item that they audited. They outsourced that work to KPMG, one of the really, really large national public accounting firms, and we came through that with positive results as well. But that work has been completed. I'm sure there will be more, though.
I'm sorry, you said you're sure there'll be more?
Yes.
Yeah.
That one in particular was different because it ran through the state, the CRF dollars, as opposed to running through CDE, which is the ESSER dollars, so slightly different animal.
But the bottom line is everything came out just the way it's supposed to, which is great news. Any other questions?
I had just one real quick, there's one more letter, and I think it might be in your packet. If not, I'm just going to cover it real high level. It's basically a letter directly to the board and the committee, because we as external auditors are directly engaged to perform the audit on behalf of the board. So there's certain required communications we have. Having this meeting really covers that. So having it, in person versus a written letter. But basically, if there was any sort of like changes in the year, audit adjustments we had, it would be reported in that letter. We didn't have any of those, so really no news is good news with that letter. But I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that letter. And then also attached to that is what's called a management representation letter, which is another letter that we have to receive before we can issue our audit, that is signed by management saying that they let us know of, they gave us copies of board minutes. So like that's one of the things we review is board minutes that happen throughout the year from these meetings. Let us know about any litigation or other kind of compliance type items. So that's really just attached for your reference to know that we do get that letter as part of our audit package as well. So just wanted to mention that. Really, like I said, no news is good news, but it's just some of those required communications that we have with you all. But that was all I had, unless there's any other questions, comments.
Well, I do want to draw anybody who's paying attention to this is attention to pages 9 and 10 of the audit, because again, we thanks to our amazing staff here, led by Justin and Bill, we received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. So I just want to say thank you for your amazing work. And then a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. I'm not sure what the difference is between the two, but I think they're both really high praise for the really good work that you guys do. So I just wanted to say thank you and draw attention to that. So good job.
Thanks so much. There's a lot of work that goes into preparing these financial statements by Justin and his team, and particularly Heather Gruters, one of our accountants on staff, who literally puts them together. So, it's not any one person, it's definitely the team, and really everybody throughout the organization that has to follow all the rules and answer the phone call when there's questions about things. So this is really the very top of a very large pyramid of work that goes into it to put this all together.
Well, and to do all this while you're implementing a new ERP system and to be waiting for guidance from the feds while still having to spend the money, I think it's just been a heavy lift for all of you. So I just want to say thank you. And I think Rob wanted to say something.
I did. I want to thank Bill, Justin, and the team for doing just another outstanding job. I think that board members, what you might not see or what others outside the organization might not have seen over the course of the past year is we've Bill's team has worked overtime, triple overtime, to make sure that we were able to purchase and procure the things that we needed following best practices. I don't think anybody was ever waiting on resources to be able to solve the problems we were going through, all while making sure that we follow all of the accounting best practices and financial best practices. And so a particularly challenging year. And so, which makes those awards that you mentioned, Kathy, even that much more rewarding, because our team was impressively responsive to the needs of the organization, and did that while making sure that we're being just sound with our financial practices. So I just wanted to congratulate them and thank them.
Anything else, board members? Well, I think we have a little bit of time then between now and when our meeting starts. But thank you, Allison, for coming up on a bitter cold day. Appreciate you braving the cold to come meet with us and for walking us through all this. And we'll look forward to another great audit next year. So, yeah. Thank you. Then we'll stand in recess until 6 o'clock.